Are we live?
Yes, we're live.
We're live, or so it appears.
For now.
For now, we're live.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Monk Chat Gone Spooky. Hello to Suzanne, Julie, Manal, Pial, Jay, Chad, Dharma Learner, Karuna, Mary, Jayanta. Welcome, everybody. I hope that you're not planning on going to bed too soon tonight.
So this is a special. Our regular scheduled monk chat has been possessed by ghost chat. Yeah, we came up with this concept a while ago in honor of Halloween, and there are quite a few kind of scary stories in the both in the Vinaya Pitaka and the Sutta Pitaka, and so we went through and selected some, and we've been reflecting on them also. And there's some kind of we have a little bit of a playful spirit with this this concept of the ghost chat, but we're also realizing that there's profound teachings also along with these stories. And then it occurred to us just because we've been processing this for quite some time, that we would like to dedicate the merit to this teaching to all beings in all planes of existence, because they're we really don't want to take it too lighthearted. There are beings suffering in all realms, and there's a potential for liberation also. Maybe not in the lower realms, but that we can be of help to those beings to have a more fortunate rebirth. So we're wishing for the potential for liberation of all beings that maybe not in their current state, but they can find a better rebirth. So we're dedicating the merit to all planes of existence, the beings that are still suffering.
Yes.
So
Ayyā.
That being said, we're going to start in. We're not going to do the question and answer period at the first section of this. It's all going to be our storytelling. Some of this is from the commentaries, and some of it's the background story for a sutta. The first story I'm going to tell is from the Vinaya. And I've heard Bhante Brahmali tell this story more than once, and kind of shuffled into his talks. It seems like a favorite story of his somehow, but it does. I'm going to embellish it just slightly, just for the sake of storytelling. But it is in the Sutta, the Vinaya Pitaka, and it's in the chapter on stealing, the Prajika of stealing. So it's one of the background stories. So as it goes, there's this monk who's he's a Pamsakula robe wearer. He wears patchwork robe, and the Buddha gave permission for the monks to go into the charnel grounds and take cloth from the corpses, that they could take the Pamsakula cloth. And so this monk goes to the charnel ground, and he sees there's a fresh corpse. There's someone who just recently died. And so there's a new cloth on this corpse. So he goes, probably kneels down, and he's starting to take the cloth off of the corpse. And then there's a peta, or a ghost, still inside or with the corpse. And the ghost says, "Don't take my cloth." And, it's, and so the monk is ignoring this. Don't take my cloth. And then the monk is gathering up, the bhikkhu is gathering up the cloth, bundling it up. And he gets up and he starts walking away. And then the corpse gets up and starts following after the bhikkhu. And the bhikkhu realizes that he's being followed. Oh no. And he starts running as fast as he can. And then the corpse is in hot pursuit after the bhikkhu. And the bhikkhu runs as fast as he can to his kuti, to his hut, his cabin. He rushes in and slams the door, and then the corpse falls over. And I would say fall over dead, but the corpse was already dead. But the volition, the impulse that was still left from the peta, from the ghost, was driving this corpse. And Ajahn Brahmali says, this is the first zombie story in history in the Vinaya. And so I believe it's other monks see the corpse and bring this issue up. What's going on here?
Why is there a dead corpse outside your kuti?
I took this cloth from this corpse and got up. And so they took the matter to the Lord Buddha, as they always do. And the Lord Buddha said, well, and then the monk also got nervous and wondered if that was a parajika, was a defeat, he was going to no longer be a monk for stealing. And the Lord Buddha said, no, it's not a parajika, but now I'm laying down a rule that you can't take a cloth from a fresh corpse. So my thought about that is because it was a peta, it wasn't actually someone who was still in the last moments of dying and got up and chased. If it was a living being, a living human, then it would have been a theft, and then that would have been a defeat. But it was a peta. So that strong tanha, that strong desire and clinging to the body and clinging to the cloth is what drove the corpse. So we're kind of giggling about this because this is kind of how Westerners are with these kind of things. But anyway, the unfortunate peta hopefully has a better rebirth somewhere.
Well, there's a good lesson there, I guess, right? If anyone's too attached to their body, be careful, because you just might be buried alive and still attached to your corpse, stuck inside of a coffin. Maybe someone will start taking your possessions while your corpse is lying fresh, and you'll start chasing after them and craving and desperation. So that's maybe a warning sign to us all.
So the peta, it would be a rebirth in the peta realm, but still clinging to the body. It's no longer the lifeless body. So that's the first story we're telling.
Not selling.
Not selling, but telling. And so I'll pass this on to Ayya.
Thank you. Yeah.
For your sharing.
Yeah, that's a good one. The first zombie story. I think that's something that all the Buddhists we can be proud of, maybe, being the first ones to have a zombie story. So the one I'm going to tell here is in the Mara Samyutta. So this is in the Samyutta Nikaya. It's in the Sutta Pitaka. And it's Samyutta Nikaya 4.6. And so if you don't know, well, you might want to be informed that there is a being named Mara in early Buddhism. And Mara, his name is related to mortality. So you could think of this as the king of death. He's the king of all demons, is one way of putting it. Demons loosely, using that term loosely, because that's not really a concept that we have. But he's he's actually in the highest sensual heaven. So you have this kind of possessive, wicked king of death who wants beings to stay in samsara and be reborn. Kind of like when we have pets in our house and the pets escape, and we don't want them to escape because we think that we own them. But from the perspective of the pet, they just exist. in the house. They don't have an owner. And so Mara, we're kind of like Mara's pets, where he's this sort of king of death that rules over things. And when you're practicing and cultivating very deeply on the Buddhist path, he tries to stop you because he doesn't want you escaping. It's like when we're the dogs that run out, or we're the Teddy the cat who runs out and kills chipmunks. It's like the local monastery cat here. So that's the context. And when the Buddha attained awakening, he was in Mara as kind of this adversary to the Buddha, right? He's sort of you could say the Buddha's nemesis or enemy, but not really the Buddha's nemesis, but the Buddha is his nemesis. We could think about it like that, because the Buddha is leading everybody out of his domain. He's leading everybody out of his kingdom and out of his control. So you have Mara who can shapeshift and take different forms, and he might possess or go inside different monastics or lay people, or harass people, or come into different forms. And little do you know that that's actually Mara. So one night the Buddha was meditating, and the night was thick and extremely dark. So it was a very spooky, you could think about it as a dark Halloween night, maybe a new moon. The black of the night is super thick, and the Buddha's outside meditating under a tree. And whoops, pull this up here. The Buddha's meditating under a tree in this thick dark of the night, and there's a gentle rain drizzling down. So the Buddha's kind of just basking in this dark, gentle rain, meditating. And then there's this massive serpent that comes crawling out of the dark. It seeps in and starts writhing around. You could think writhing around the body of the Buddha and kind of writhing up the tree. And it says that its tongue is flicking like lightning flashes in a thunderstorm, and its eyes were like large dishes. So you could think of large black eyes with the tongue slipping out like lightning. Its hood was massive. It says like a big sieve. And the sound of the snake breathing was like a blacksmith's bellows. So as the rain is pouring down, you have this tongue and giant serpent wrapping around the Buddha. And it's Mara trying to constrict and frighten him and put goosebumps on him in the dead of night. So be very careful if you're meditating at nighttime. There just might be a massive, scary serpent that comes crawling out. And so this serpent is kind of breathing around the Buddha, and the Buddha realizes that this is Mara, the wicked. This is a king of death, the king that tries to harass the Buddha and stop him from teaching the Dhamma. And so the Buddha gives a little bit of a inspiring, uplifting verse. He says, "A self-controlled sage frequents empty buildings for lodging. It's appropriate for such a person to live there after relinquishing. Though there are lots of creepy crawlies and lots of flies and snakes, they wouldn't stir a hair of a great sage in that empty hut. Though the sky may split and the earth may quake, and all creatures be stricken with fear, and even if an arrow aimed at their breast, the Buddha takes no shelter in attachments." And so Mara the wicked, he realizes the Buddha knows me, the Holy One knows me. And this kind of massive fear-striking serpent kind of shrivels up, and it's just Mara, depressed and sad that he can't actually penetrate into the Buddha and kind of get him, shake him and kind of strike fear in his heart. So it says that when Mara realizes that the Buddha sees him, he kind of becomes depressed and sad, and he vanishes right there. So this snake just kind of vanishes in the dark of the night, and the Buddha keeps meditating in peace. So that's a little encounter with Mara. But one time I was told, one of the residents here, and actually saw Joe, I'll call you out. Joe said, maybe we should have metta for Mara. And that stuck in my mind. Or maybe we should remember that Mara is a sentient being too. So even if Mara starts manifesting and kind of shape-shifting demonic snake forms in the middle of the night, we can have metta and realize that Mara is also suffering. So I'll pass it off to Ayyā Suvijjānā for another reading from the suttas.
So this one, well, this isn't a disturbing one. This is quite graphic. It's actually from the Samyutta Nikaya. It's the Lakkhana Samyutta. There's a bhikkhu named Lakkhana, who's a companion to Mahamoggallana. And you may know that Mahamoggallana was known for his psychic powers. He was able to see things that other people couldn't see. He was able to do these feats that were pretty amazing. Like with his toe, he would shake the Maigira's mother's mansion to stir up urgency in the other monks that were slackers and things like that. But in this case, they're abiding near Vulture's Peak, and I'll read there's a description of their dwelling and what happens. And this is called the skeleton. So this is the first sutta in this collection. Thus I have heard, on one occasion, the Blessed One was dwelling at Rajagaha in the bamboo grove, the squirrel sanctuary. Now on that occasion, the Venerable Lakkhana and the Venerable Mahamoggallana were dwelling on Mount Vulture Peak. Then in the morning, the Venerable Mahamoggallana, dressed and taking his bowl and robe, approached the Venerable Lakkhana and said to him, "Come, friend Lakkhana, let us enter Rajagaha for alms." "All right, friend," the Venerable Lakkhana replied. Then, as he was coming down from Mount Vulture Peak, the Venerable Mahamoggallana displayed a smile in a certain place. The Venerable Lakkhana said to him, "For what reason, friend he just says Moggallana, did you display a smile?" "This is not the time for that question, friend Lakkhana. Ask me that question when we're in the presence of the Blessed One." Then, when the Venerable Lakkhana and the Venerable Mahamoggallana had walked for alms in Rajagaha and returned from their alms round, after their meal they approached the Blessed One. Having paid homage to the Blessed One, they sat down to one side, and the Venerable Lakkhana said to the Venerable Mahamoggallana, "Here." As he was coming down from the Mount Vulture Peak, the Venerable Mahamoggallana displayed a smile in a certain place. "For what reason, friend Moggallana, did you display that smile?" "Here, friend, as I was coming down from Mount Vulture Peak, I saw a skeleton moving through the air. Vultures, crows, and hawks following it in hot pursuit were pecking at it between the ribs, stabbing it and tearing it apart, while it uttered cries of pain. It occurred to me, it is wonderful indeed. It is amazing indeed that there could be such a being, that there could be such a spirit, that there could be such a form of individual existence." Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: "Bhikkhus, there are disciples who dwell, having become vision, having become knowledge, in that a disciple can know, see, and witness such a sight. In the past, bhikkhus, I too saw that being, but I did not speak about it, for if I had spoken about it, others would not have believed me. And if they had not believed me, that would have led to their harm and suffering for a long time." And Ayya Vaddha had mentioned that because they wouldn't have believed him, then that would have interfered with him being able to teach others because of their disbelief. So he didn't want to say things that were too incredible. That being, bhikkhus, used to be a cattle butcher in this same Rajagaha, having been tormented in hell for many years, for many hundreds of years, for many thousands of years, for many hundreds of thousands of years, as a result of that karma, as a residual result of that same karma, he is experiencing such a form of individual existence. So this is their residual karma here. Should I go on?
Please, let's see. What other? So a cattle butcher was a skeleton flying
Yes.
through the air, being tortured by the vultures. And
Yes.
what other?
So then there's more. I'm not going to read
Forms of
all of these beings that we're seeing. And then it says, the remaining suttas in this subchapter follow the same pattern as the first. So they can come down from Vulture Peak, and the Mahamoggallana smiles, and Venerable Lakana asks, for what reason is that smile? And again, he says, wait till we're in the presence of the Lord Buddha before I tell you. So it's ellipsing to the point where he's revealing why he smiled. Here, friend, as I was coming down from Mount Vulture Peak, I saw a piece of meat moving through the air. Vultures and crows and hawks following it in hot pursuit were stabbing at it and tearing it apart as it uttered cries of pain. That being, bhikkhus, was a cattle butcher in the same Rajagaha.
So a floating piece of meat being tormented. It's interesting.
And then he saw a flailed man. That being was a sheep butcher in the same Rajagaha. So these people lived by the slaughter. Their livelihood was the slaughter of animals. And it continues with different kinds of butchers. I don't know if you want to hear all of it. I saw a man with body hairs of swords moving through the air. Those swords kept rising up and striking his body while he uttered cries of pain. That being was a hog butcher in the same Rajagaha. I'm going to skip down to, this is a very lovely one. I saw a man submerged in a pot of dung, eating dung with his both hands. That being, bhikkhus, was a hostile Brahmin in the same Rajagaha in the time of the Buddha Kassapa's dispensation. He invited the Bhikkhu Sangha to a meal. Having had rice pots filled with dung, he said to the bhikkhus, sirs, eat as much as you want from this and take the rest away with you. So this is a malicious Brahmin. Then a flayed woman, I saw a flayed woman moving through the air, vultures and crows and hawks following her in hot pursuit, were stabbing at her and tearing her apart while she uttered cries of pain. That woman was an adulteress in the same Rajagaha. I'm going to keep skipping, I think. I saw a woman, her body roasting, sweltering, sooty, moving through the air while she uttered cries of pain. That woman was the chief queen of the king of Kalinga. Of jealous character, she poured a brazier of coals over one of the king's consorts. And then there was the headless trunk. I saw a headless trunk moving through the air. I'm sorry, we shouldn't be laughing at these things, should we? It's hard to. I think this is kind of because of the discomfort of this idea of a headless trunk. I saw a headless trunk moving through the air. Its eyes and mouth were on its chest. Vultures, crows, and hawks, following it in hot pursuit, were stabbing at it and tearing it apart while it uttered cries of pain. That being was an executioner named Harika, in the same Rajagaha. And then there's the evil bhikkhu. So I saw a bhikkhu moving through the air. His outer robe, bowl, waistband, and body were burning, blazing, and flaming while he uttered cries of pain. That bhikkhu had been an evil bhikkhu in the Buddha Kassapa's dispensation. And then there was a bhikkhuni moving through the air, and there's the same outer robe, bowl, waistband, body were burning, blazing, and flaming. And there was a probationary nun, a novice monk, a novice nun, moving through the air. Her outer robe, bowl, waistband, and body were burning, blazing, and flaming while she uttered cries of pain. It occurred to me, it is wonderful indeed, it is amazing indeed, that there could be such a being, that there could be such a spirit, that there could be such a form of individual existence. Then the Blessed One addressed the bhikkhus thus: Bhikkhus, there are disciples who dwell, having become vision, having become knowledge, in that a disciple can know, see, and witness such a sight. In the past, bhikkhus, I too saw that novice nun, but I did not speak about her, for if I had spoken about it, others would not have believed me, and if they had not believed me, that would have led to their harm and suffering for a long time. That novice nun had been an evil novice nun in the Buddha Kassapa's dispensation, having been tormented in hell for many years, many hundreds of years, many thousands of years, many hundreds of thousands of years, as a result of that karma, as a residual result of that same karma, she is experiencing such a form of individual existence. So the only hope is that this is burning off. The end of that residual karma is burning off, and perhaps seeing an arahant as they're flying past may help them with a better existence, and hopefully their torment has ended by now.
Yes.
And who knows? It may be one of us.
One of us in a past life.
So, yeah, even Mahamoggallana had described how he had been a former Mara. He had been the uncle of the current Mara, and that he had taken the form of a boy who had struck one of the one of the disciples of Kassapa, and drew blood. They were like they were trying to get the villagers to taunt the bhikkhus and not follow them and not offer them, give them offerings and such. And so he possessed this boy, and then the Mara actually fell to a hell and was tormented for many years and many thousands of years, and then eventually became a disciple of the Lord Buddha, was the current dispensation. So who knows? So I give it to you now. Okay. You have a story that you've
We do have another one. And I see there are some questions that are coming up. So feel free to leave questions about anything, and we'll get to it after we finish telling up some of the stories here. So the next story it's not in the Sutta Pitaka. This is the commentary. So it's won't be able to read it for yourself unless you read the commentary. You can read Bhikkhu Bodhi's footnotes, or if you can read the Pali. But this is a story about a yaka. So yaka, sometimes in Pali, yaka can actually mean just any kind of spirit. But in this case, it's a specific form of being. It's a yaka, sometimes translated as an ogre, or kind of like a grumpy spirit. They're kind of like grumpy
Fierce.
ogre, yeah. And they have a good and a bad side to them. So Bhikkhu Bodhi says that they have this potential to be interested in, because they are close to humans, they're kind of like earth spirits, you could say, but they're just a little bit grumpy and fierce. But they do have kind of a sweet spot in their heart where if you touch them, they can sometimes listen. So there were actually some stories of yakas in the suttas who would listen to the Buddha, or they would listen to disciples of the Buddha. And there were other yakas who were not so nice. And so this is a story of a yaka named Alavaka, who wasn't the happiest chap. He was a little bit grumpy. And so he was living, we can go once upon a time. Okay, so this was once upon a time. Back in ancient India, there's this dark forest. And in this dark forest, back then the royalty owned the forest, right? And the royalty would go hunting in the wilderness. So deep, kind of within this dark forest owned by a prince, it's in the kingdom of Alavi. That's why his name is Alavaka. There is a kind of a cave area deep within this woods, and there's a tree nearby. And this was this yaka's hut, right?
His haunt.
His haunt. This was his haunt. So not to get too modern here, but it's a little bit like Shrek. This is kind of like if Shrek was a spiritual being, this kind of ogre living in the woods who's fierce and can scare people and things like that. But we have, this is Shrek before he was someone that we may be familiar with from Disney movies. This was an evil, not evil, but a very grumpy spirit. And so this grumpy spirit had to eat human flesh. So you would go in the wilderness, and it would grab onto beings, and it would eat the flesh of these beings by kind of possessing them and consuming their flesh.
Human beings.
Yeah. And so one time the king goes out hunting with a group of his servants, or maybe other high-ranking people. They go out hunting in the wilderness. And the king kind of goes off in his own little direction to go hunting, and he ends up in the area, the haunt of the Yaka Alavaka. And so the Yaka Alavaka, as the king is kind of maybe looking around for animals near the tree, the Yaka Alavaka grabs onto the king, and he drags him into his haunt. And the king is frightened. He says, "Oh my God, please." And he tries to make a deal with the Yaka. "Please, anything, don't eat me. I'll make a deal with you." And so the Yaka says, "What kind of deal can you make with me? I only come across people so often. If I let you go, I might lose my chance if you're lying." Right? And the king says, "I promise I'll make a deal. How about this? If you let me go, every single day, I will send you somebody to your haunt so that you can eat them alive. So you'll be assured a meal every single day. And I promise you that if I don't send you anyone on that day, you can come and consume me alive." And so once you make a pact with a Yaka, that Yaka is able to follow through. So if you make a promise, kind of a pact with this spirit, then if you don't fulfill it, then that spirit will be able to have the power to kind of follow through on the pact. So it could go into the kingdom and kill the king by eating him alive. So the Yaka says, "Okay, that sounds like a pretty good deal." So he strikes a deal with the king, right? We have this kind of beginning little seed for what is going to become a more tragic story here, where the king, in order to save his own life, creates what seems like maybe something that at the time was a good idea, but ends up being not the best idea, because then he goes back and he tells his advisor, I think I made a mistake. I made a deal with this yucca living deep in the woods, the yucca alavaka, that every single day, in order to spare me my life, I would send him a human being alive so that he could eat them. How are we going to do this? I think I'm going to die. And the counselor said, the advisor to the king says, oh, don't worry, king. Don't worry, king. We can do this. We have a great idea. How about every day we'll get someone from the prison to go over there? And so they have this genius idea, not so genius, of telling the prisoners that they go to the prison and they say, you can be free. All you have to do is bring this plate of food out into the wilderness. They guide the prisoner out there. You just have to drop this plate of food at the mouth of this cave so that a spirit can eat it. And the spirit is dangerous, so we have prisoners do it. And once you do that, you can go free. So they strike this deal with the prisoners. Well, it turns out every time the prisoner gets near the cave to leave the food, the yucca alavaka possesses them, snatches them, and drags them by the feet in and eats them alive. So one by one, they start going through the prisoners. And eventually, there's no more prisoners in the kingdom of Alavi because every single day, the yucca has to eat a human being alive. And so eventually, the prisons are empty because they've killed all the prisoners off. And the king starts getting nervous. Oh my God, there's no more prisoners. What am I going to do? And the counselor says, no worries, king. I have an idea. We'll put a bunch of gold in the street so someone will steal it. And once they steal it, we'll imprison them. And then once they're in prison, we'll bring them out. Well, people started to get word that the prisoners were disappearing into the woods near the haunt of the yucca alavaka. So nobody stole the gold. This idea didn't work. The genius plan of leaving gold in the streets didn't work, and no one stole it. So the magistrate said, okay, how about this? All the old people, we'll send the elderly to be eaten alive by the spirit yucca because people don't really, they're going to die anyway pretty soon. And the king says, no, but people really love their parents. They really love their grandparents. I don't think they'd be willing to let go of them. They'd be really upset at us if we killed them. And so the magistrate says, yeah, you know what? You're right. I don't think that they would be okay with sending the elderly off to be killed. How about the children, though, the infants? And the king says, yeah, that's a good idea. They don't care as much about the babies. So they decide that this is a better genius idea, that there's no prisoners and no one would steal, and the elderly are too loved. So they're going to start sending children, right? The firstborns and the infants and the young children into the woods to be eaten alive by this grumpy spirit, alavaka. So they start sending the kids in, and the yucca grabs the kids by the feet and eats them alive.
So it's going too
and it's
far.
a little bit horrific, but eventually they run out of children.
Then the families start running away.
Yeah, families start getting word that, well, all the kids are going to be taken by the kingdom and brought to the woods to be eaten by the yucca alavaka. So there's no more children. And all the pregnant women leave the kingdom because they don't want to give birth in this kingdom where if you're born here, then you're going to be brought to the wilderness as soon as you're born. So the magistrate says, there's no more children, Your Majesty. All that's left is your only son. Dun, dun, dun. There are no more children except for the king's son. This is the only child left. And the magistrate says, but I know that you wouldn't kill your only son. Obviously, you don't treasure your life more than this boy, right? And the king says, no, I think it's important. I think I need to run the kingdom. We can kill him. It's okay. Maybe for the benefit of others, we should bring my son to the wilderness. So that's a little bit of an embellishment, but that seems to be how this went because they decided that they were going to sacrifice the king's son to the yucca alavaka in order to fulfill this deal. And then the story shifts and you can kind of pan over into the woods, the other side of the wilderness, and there's the Buddha meditating in the jungle. And the commentary says that the Buddha would use what's called, the commentary actually describes the Buddha's daily schedule in different places, kind of how he spent his time. And one of the things that they talk about is that early in the morning, the Buddha would enter this meditative attainment where he would kind of cast his vision and his compassion over the area where he was staying. and see if there were any beings who were ready with little dust in their eyes who could receive the teaching. So maybe he would go alms round, he would pass by that person's home, or he would do something that day. So he would kind of scan with this great compassion the area. And it says that he scanned and he found that the king was planning on killing his son and sending them to the Yaka Alavaka. But he saw that the son had the potential to attain deep stages of awakening. And actually, the spirit Alavaka also had the potential to become a stream enterer. So this is kind of that little soft spot inside the Yakas, that sometimes they could understand the Dhamma. So why did the Buddha wait until everyone was gone? The commentary doesn't say, but apparently eventually the Buddha realized that they were going to do this and that there was this potential here for awakening. And so the Buddha gets his robes together and he goes on a journey to the haunt of the Yaka Alavaka, deep into this grove in the wilderness. And the Buddha travels there, and it turns out that actually that day, the Yaka Alavaka was out traveling. He was out at a Yakas conference in the Himalayas. So apparently the Yakas were having conferences. So he was traveling, but he had a doorman, a door Yaka, at the door of the haunt. And the Buddha shows up and he says, I'm going to stay in the haunt of this Yaka. I'm going to stay here. And the doorman says, oh, I don't know, Lord Buddha. The Yaka, the doorman apparently is faithful to the Buddha. He says, oh, I don't know. It's so great that you're here, but the owner, my boss, he's a little bit grumpy. I don't think he'd be too happy if he found out that you were staying here. And I think that he would hurt me if I let you come into the haunt and stay here. So the doorman is very nervous. And the Buddha says, okay, then you go tell the Yaka that I just came here of my own will. You just alarm him that I'm here and he can come deal with the situation as appropriate. So the doorman says, okay, yes. And so the doorman zooms off in his maybe a floating vehicle of some sort to the Yaka conference to alert the Yaka Alavaka that the Buddha is staying in the haunt that day, obstructing his haunt. And so the Buddha goes inside the Yaka's home, which apparently was rather extravagant. And he's sitting on the inside, you could maybe inside of a large tree or something, or some kind of invisible haunt. And he's sitting in there.
On his throne. The Alavaka's throne.
Yeah, he had a nice seat, nice couch. And the Buddha plops himself on the seat.
Probably not plopping.
And
mindfully takes the seat.
Sits down cross-legged. And there's women here that are the wives of this Yaka. And they come around the Lord Buddha to hear the Dhamma from him. So the Buddha starts teaching
the
Yakinis the Dhamma while they're all waiting for the grumpy husband to come back. And eventually he comes back and he comes in. He says, who's in my haunt? And the Buddha alarms him that he's there. And this is where the sutta picks up. And the Yaka Alavaka says to the Buddha, get out, ascetic. So he's pointing him, get out. And the Buddha says, all right, sir. And he walks out of the haunt. And the Yaka says, get in, ascetic. And the Buddha says, all right. And the Buddha went inside the haunt. And the Yaka says, get out, ascetic. The Buddha says, okay, yes, sir. And the Buddha walks out of the haunt. And then again, the Yaka says, get in here, ascetic. And the Buddha says, all right. And he walks in. So the Buddha's kind of strange, going out, in at the orders, being very polite with this Yaka. And the third time, he does it again. Get out, ascetic. Get in here, ascetic. And the Buddha follows along. But this is the climax. After 3 times in the suttas, something might be changing. So the 4th time, the spirit Alavaka says, get out, ascetic. And the Buddha says, no, sir, I won't get out. Do what you must. So there's kind of a standoff here between the Buddha and the spirit, where all of a sudden the Buddha is disobeying. But he's very confident, and the Buddha has this very kind of inner composure, and he's been kind of following the Yaka to a certain extent. So he's showing that the Buddha has this flexibility. He's not kind of very firm and going to meet with aggression. But once the moment is ripe, the Buddha says, no. And the Yaka says, I'll ask you a question, ascetic. If you don't answer me, I'll drive you insane or explode your heart or grab you by the feet and throw you to the far shore of the Ganges. So this Yaka is threatening to kind of drive the Buddha mad or physically assault him or cause some kind of illness. And the Buddha says, I don't see anyone in this world with its gods, Mars, and Brahmas, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins, its gods and humans, who could do that to me. But anyway, ask what you wish. So now we get this kind of riddle between the Buddha and the Yaka.
It's kind of like the Sphinx or something like that.
Yeah.
Or you're not going to read it?
No, I am. So the Buddha gives a riddle. I'm sorry, the Yaka gives a riddle to the Buddha. And the Yaka says, what is a person's best wealth? What brings happiness when practiced well? What's the sweetest taste of all? The one they say has the best life. How do they live? So the Yaka's curious, but what's the best kind of wealth? Buddha says, faith here is a person's best wealth. The teaching brings happiness when practiced well. Truth is the sweetest taste of all. The one they say has the best life lives by wisdom. And the Yaka starts getting interested. This Dhamma is starting to kind of sink in a little bit. He says, how do you cross the flood? How do you cross the deluge? How do you get over suffering? How do you get purified? And the Buddha responds, similarly, by faith you cross the flood, and by diligence the deluge. By energy you get past suffering, and you're purified by wisdom. So we start to get, we start with faith, and we diligently strive and put forth energy, and we purify ourselves with wisdom. But the Yaka asks, how do you get wisdom? How do you earn wealth? How do you get a good reputation? How do you hold on to friends? So we can probably understand why he was having a hard time with this one. How do the departed not grieve when passing from this world to the next? So the Buddha says, one who is diligent and discerning gains wisdom by wanting to learn, having faith in the Arahants, in the teaching for becoming extinguished. Being responsible, acting appropriately, and working hard, you earn wealth. Truthfulness wins you a good reputation. You hold on to friends by giving. That's how the departed do not grieve when passing from this world to the next. A faithful householder who has these four qualities does not grieve after passing away: truth, principle, steadfastness, and generosity. Go ahead, ask others as well. There are many ascetics and Brahmins. See whether anything better is found than truth, self-control, generosity, and patience. The Yaka says, why now would I question the many ascetics and Brahmins? Today I understand what's good for the next life. It was truly for my benefit that the Buddha came to stay at Alavi. Today I understand where a gift is very fruitful. I myself will journey village to village, town to town, paying homage to the Buddha in the natural excellence of the teaching.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So as you could see, that was from the sutras itself. The background story is from the commentaries. I think you probably already mentioned that.
Mm-hmm.
But just to remind people, there's a little bit of a distinction, and whether this is there's a belief that's also been passed down through the generations, these stories. So, but they're not strictly part of the Pali canon. So we're going to move to another origin story. It's not quite as horrific.
This is our last one.
This is the last story, and this is believed to be the background story of the Karaniya Metta Sutta, what most people understand as the discourse on loving kindness. And it's about these bhikkhus, these monks, and they were gathering before the rains retreat in the presence of the Lord Buddha. And they had this desire to go and find a secluded place for practice. So they came to the Lord Buddha. I believe he was at Savatthi, and told him of their desire to go to a secluded place for the Vasa, for the rains retreat. And so the Buddha agreed to that. But before they left, he gave them, it's in the origin story, there's a large number, like 85,000 different meditation subjects. It's detailed of the basic, probably 40 that's in the Visuddhimagga, but suitable for each of the bhikkhus. He knew the minds of the bhikkhus, so he was able to give them some detailed instructions, and then agreed that they could go off and find a place. So they go off wandering, and they before the rains retreat starts. And before it starts, they find this lovely place in the mountains, a very remote, beautiful, forested area. And I said, "Oh, this looks." It's just as, oh, it was almost like enchanted. The way they describe it is just so beautiful. I won't get into the details of the beauty of it, but they thought, "Oh, this looks like a lovely place." And little did they know that there were the tree devas that inhabiting this forest. And because it was such a remote place, the tree devas, they said that the devas and their families were actually spending time on the forest floor. Usually they're up in the trees, but because there were no human beings around for quite some time and some distance away, they were just kind of enjoying the entirety of this beautiful forest. So when they saw the monks coming, they went up or away somehow from the forest or up in the trees. It doesn't say exactly in the commentary where they went, but they kind of fled away. But they were able to see what was going on in the forest. So I imagine they moved upwards, and they were looking down and seeing, these monks are coming, these ascetics are coming into our forest. And the monks spent the night there in this forest. And the next morning they went, and I guess they knew of a town. They went into a town that was some distance away. And the village people saw the monks coming, and they were like rejoicing. They said, we've been in such a remote place. We haven't seen ascetics for a long time. So they rejoiced in their appearance, and they said, would you stay for the rains retreat? We could be of support for you for the rains. Somehow they knew about the Vasa already. They, maybe the word gets around, or was it long enough into the time of the Buddha's dispensation that, people knew of this. So they were invited. They said they would give them support. The villagers would support the bhikkhus for the rains. So, this is a perfect place, they think, and they go back. I think the villagers even said they would build kutis, huts for them. And the next morning there was another village also close by, and they went there, and there was the same response. Yes, please stay. We'll support you. So they were going to be too much of a burden for the villagers, because there's more than one village that was in walking distance. This is a great resort, so beautiful, peaceful. Their meditation is just really blissful and peaceful. It's so quiet and wonderful. So meanwhile, the devas are kind of feeling displaced wherever they are, up in the, above the treetops, looking down and seeing these huts being built. And they're going, I think they're going to stay for a while. I'm hearing something about a rains retreat, and it's 3 months. What? What are we going to do? So they get together and said, let's haunt them. Because they were devas. They could change appearance, and they could do. See, not only the yuccas can have a different kind of personality. They're not all peaceful and lovely, and so they said, okay, we're going to scare them away. We're going to haunt them. So So when the monks had come back from their alms, and they're doing their days abiding below at the roots of trees, meditating peacefully, suddenly they started to see visions, scary faces, yucca-like faces, horrifying faces, making menacing looks at them, and screeching, horrible screeching sounds. And they were falling away from their meditation because they were having these horrid visions and hearing these horrid sounds. And after a few days of this, I started smelling this horrible smell, along as well as seeing these horrible visions and hearing these horrible sounds. There was this smell that was said to like crush their minds. It was so putrid and horrible. And so the monks started getting pale and drawn and depressed and distressed, and they didn't know what to do. But no one was speaking to one another. They thought, each one thought that this was only happening to them. Does this sound familiar? It's human psychology. I'm the only one that's experiencing this horrible thing. So they went to attend on the elder bhikkhu of the group. And this elder bhikkhu says, "What's happening to all of you?" I don't know if he's the only one that was being plagued, but in the background story, this is what's said. He says, "You used to be bright and looking so radiant and wonderful, and now you're just all pale and drawn and looking horrible. What's going on?" So each one of them said, "Oh yes, and we're having this visions, this horrifying visions and horrible sounds and horrible smells." And then the elder said, "Oh, I think that this is a case where this Vasa dwelling is not appropriate. It's not a good or safe dwelling for us. So we need to go back to the Lord Buddha and report what's happening and try to find another dwelling place for the Vasa." And in the monastic code, we can, if we can't keep the first Vasa place, if we're within a month, we can determine a second one, but we won't have our katina privileges, but we must keep a second Vasa. So they went back to the Lord Buddha and told them what happened. And the Lord Buddha, when he was seeing them coming in, he said, "Oh, you shouldn't leave your Vasa dwelling. This is not appropriate." And they explained "Oh, please don't make us go back. It's so horrible. It's so scary, terrible." And they tell the Lord Buddha what was going on. And with his divine wisdom, he's like looking around and he's saying, "Well, there actually is no other place available right now for you." Was something like nothing larger than the size of a four-legged chair or something like that was available for all of you. And there was something like 500 monks that had gathered. So 500 means many, because you'll see that number again and again in the suttas. And I think that's like we say 1,000,000 or something like that. But there's a large group of bhikkhus, and there wasn't any place available for them. And with the Buddha's wisdom, also he knew that there was a way to deal with this problem. So he said, "You need to go back, but I'm going to give you instruction first." So he gives all of the bhikkhus the instruction that's now known as the Karaniya Metta Sutta. And then so they're instilled with this teaching, equipped with this teaching on metta. And one version of the story I heard was that while they were walking back, they were cultivating the metta. They were doing metta bhavana as they were walking back. So they returned to that forest, and then the version of the story that they had been doing this cultivation as they were walking back, the tree devas saw them coming. And instead of saying, "Oh no, they're coming back," they went, "Oh wow, they're actually concerned about our welfare. They're emitting this metta, this beautiful radiance, and so they were overcome with joy, and they came down and they bowed at their feet, paid respects to them, and please come. We'll care for you. We'll sweep out your huts. We'll bring you water. We'll massage your backs and set up a guard. So they sense the metta just with their return and the awe. So instead of being hostile towards them, they were providing for them, honoring them, and guarding them, protecting them. So that it's said that those monks was perfected the metta bhavana to such a point that they all had attained with using metta as a vehicle. They attained arhatship. So
this is a powerful. This is people's today, or people, many people and meditators talk about experiencing problems, or maybe they see different spirits or dead people, the people who are deceased and are ghosts, and they talk about how metta makes them, instead of wanting to harm the spirits or wanting to harm the deceased, that sending metta benefits them. So it seems like a common teaching in different traditions.
So I could read from the Sutta Central that. So the
Metta Sutta?
Yeah, we'll go to no, this is the benefits. Do you have the other, we could look at Bhante Sujatos. Would you actually like to read that one?
Read this out loud?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So this is the Metta Sutta. Those who are skilled in the meaning of scripture should practice as follows to realize the state of peace. Let them be able and upright, very upright, easy to speak to, gentle and humble, content and unburdensome, unbusied, living lightly, alert, with senses calmed, courteous, not fawning on families. Let them not do the slightest thing that others might blame with reason. May they be happy and safe. May all beings be happy. Whatever living creatures there are, with not a one left out, frail or firm, long or large, medium, small, tiny or round, visible or invisible, living far or near, those who have been born and those about to be born, may all beings be happy. Let none turn from another, nor look down on anyone anywhere, though provoked or aggrieved. Let them not wish pain on each other. Even as a mother would protect with her life her child, her only child, so too for all creatures unfold a boundless heart. With love for the whole world, unfold a boundless heart, above, below, all around, unconstricted, without enemy or foe. When standing, walking, sitting, or lying down, while yet unweary, keep this ever in mind, for this, they say, is a divine meditation in this life. Avoiding harmful views, virtuous, accomplished in insight, with sensual desire dispelled, they never return to a womb again.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So that's the beauty of this sutta, this transformative power, for ourselves internally as well as externally. So as we abandon all hatred, all fear, all adversity, and develop this boundless heart, then not only does it transform us, it also may transform others. And people have said not only beings that like Venerable Water was speaking about, maybe departed, the ghosts of the departed and so on, tormenting people. Other human beings, I've heard stories where people have been just generating thoughts of loving kindness towards an individual who may be difficult in their life, or they might be in conflict with, and they use them as an object of meditation. And it's not recommended to use that as your first object. You should also towards oneself. But if you have that person as your difficult person, you're caring for yourself as well. I've heard people that somehow the relationship changes, that the person stops being hostile towards them. So it does have a strong power of transformation, and it has 11 benefits. And I think we're going to end with the 11 benefits. So we're ending on a wholesome, transformative note.
Yeah, so the benefits of if you develop metta, you develop this loving kindness in your heart and in your own mind. The Buddha says that there are 11 benefits that you can expect
So
to.
you make it a vehicle, a basis, keep it up, consolidate it, and properly implement it.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
So if you do that with metta, the Buddha says you will sleep at ease, you'll wake happily, you don't have bad dreams. Humans love you, non-humans love you, deities protect you. You can't be harmed by fire, poison, or blade. Your mind quickly enters samadhi. Your face is clear and bright. You don't feel lost when you die. If you don't penetrate any higher, you'll be reborn in a Brahma realm, meaning that if you don't gain deeper, attain a deeper state of meditation or a deeper state of consciousness, or don't have a deeper insight into the Dhamma, then you'll be reborn in a Brahma realm. The Buddha says you can expect these 11 benefits when the heart's released by love. Loving kindness has been cultivated, developed, practiced, made a vehicle and a basis, kept up, consolidated, and properly implemented.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So we're saying these because we hope you all sleep well, despite the ghost chat. So now I think we can open it up to questions. Go to the first question.
So if anybody has any other questions, we don't have a lot of time, but we'll just try to
yeah, so it seems like they're further down.
Yeah.
So
lots of people.
Joseph is asking.
Joe is sending metta to people. Nice, very nice of you, Joe.
What, Karuna?
That's these are comments.
Comments.
And Sud asks, per Buddhist thought, how long does the rebirth in the Peta realm last?
I think it depends on the karma that needs to be burned off. You hear, let's see, was it Queen Malika had passed away? I believe it was Queen Malika. I might be wrong with this, but and King Pasenadi was very upset by this, and then he goes to the Buddha and asks, "What's her rebirth? Where is she gone? What's her destination?" And he the Lord Buddha ignores the question. He doesn't answer. And then, so the King Pasenadi goes away and then comes back again and asks him again several times. And the Lord Buddha refuses to answer. He just doesn't say anything. And then finally he comes back, maybe after 2 weeks or something. And then Lord Buddha says, "Oh, she's in Tawatimsa heaven." And he's like rejoicing of King Pasenadi. "Oh, my beloved wife is in the Tawatimsa heaven." And then he goes away. And then I think the monks ask him why he didn't tell him. And he said, well, she had spent like 2 weeks in a hell realm, because I think that's where it was. It was some lower realm she had spent because she had been greedy. I forget, or maybe she was a pig or something like that. But she burned off her karma really quickly. And I've heard other stories where, there's a story of a monk who was very attached to his robe. And when he passed away, the Lord Buddha says, "No one bother this robe for a while." And it was something like 2 weeks or something. And it turns out there was a louse on the robe that was saying, "This is my robe." And the louse was that monk, because it was so attached to the robe. but because of his good karma, he went to a higher rebirth after spending some time as a louse. So it's hard to tell if a Peta, also if the people are dedicating merit and the Peta has an opportunity to rejoice in the generosity and goodness of others, then maybe their time in the Peta realm will be shorter. It depends on karma. It depends on a lot of other conditions. And this is just my understanding. I don't know this through direct experience, psychic powers or anything. This is just from gathering from the suttas that there isn't a set amount of time.
Okay. Thank you, Ayya. And good comments. People seem to enjoy some of that. And let's see.
Something about Mara.
That was a comment about Mara.
I didn't hear it.
Kumu says, human and animal realms are 2 of the 31 realms to Buddhist teachings. We know now that there are 3 trillion plus galaxies. Earth can't be the only place humans and animals live. Your thoughts? Yeah, probably not. It's possible that there are other sentient beings. Very, very likely that there are other sentient beings elsewhere in the cosmos. And Buddhism talks about different world systems. So there's talks about many, many different world systems. So for instance, the humans and the animals in this world system, or even the spirits and devas and all of that in this world system, there are many other parallel world systems in Buddhist thought. So how exactly we might think about a world system in how we, modern terms, because the suttas weren't using, they didn't use terminology that's directly world system. What exactly does that mean? How we would understand it? We can't be 100% certain, but it's probably something like a solar system or a galaxy, right? Could even be a universe. Some people think about it like a whole universe. And so if you add in not just many trillions of galaxies, but also parallel universes, then it's very, very likely that there's other beings out there. That's why the Buddha says that there's kind of, we don't really count the sentient beings. There's just so many sentient beings.
And then realms of existence that if it just stretches out, like the human realm, it's just like there's human beings in this continent that we're on. I don't know if people are from other continents that are coming in, but and then there's other part of the world, there's human beings, and there's so it's kind of like, just because I'm next to this one human being doesn't mean that this is the only realm there is, or anyone just in the United States or United States and Canada. This is the only, so if you kind of picture it, I think this is what you're maybe, it extends over the ocean to other human beings, right? The human realm. So if you expand it even more to, other places in the galaxies where there are beings intelligent enough to understand our plight in samsara.
Yeah. Karuna, sort of a question, more of a comment, says, it seems disproportional that the executioner and the adulteress are suffering the same karmic rebirth.
Disproportionate.
Any comments, Ayya?
Yeah, well, I really don't know why that would be. And yeah, if I would be a Buddha if I could to answer that question. Yeah, I guess there was a flayed. Yeah, I don't know.
It's also possible that just the way that sometimes the material ends up getting organized. There's different times, sometimes expansions, right? Like there's several suttas here that all have the exact same format. So it's possible that there's certain bases, like certain kind of themes that were then expanded on, right? Because we see it's expanded on bad bhikkhu, bad bhikkhuni, bad novice monk, bad novice samaneri. So it's kind of expanded out. So it's likely that maybe some of it was expanded, but that's just a potential possibility. Can't say. And looks like Chad asks, it's interesting that someone from Buddha Kassapa's time appeared at Sakyamuni's dispensation, but still a bad rebirth. Seems like a combination of good and bad karma.
Yeah, like I said, I don't. If I were a Buddha, I would understand the karma of all that. But yeah, it does almost. If the being were able to see the arahants as they're flying through space, visible to Mahamoggallana, maybe they were able to see him. Maybe that had an influence on them. I don't know. I'm just guessing. All I can do is guess in this case.
Yeah. And Pial says, were all these images seen by Venerable Mahamoggallana about different butchers, etc.? Is that the hell realm? If that is so, hell realm is within the vicinity of human realm. What are your thoughts? Well, the sutta says that these, it doesn't actually say hell. It says that they're kind of spirits, or it says actually that they spent time in the hells, and then this is just the residual karma that's now here. So it says that they already were in hell realms, and then that kind of, they finished the time in the hells, so now they're just kind of this residual residue where they're back in this kind of realm, right? And kind of the earth spirits, so they're back kind of in this plane, but they're still suffering. It's not a very pleasant type of spirit. So my understanding is that this wasn't considered a hell realm. It was just a lower realm. So same, it's a realm of deprivation, but not equated to the hells. Is that your understanding, Ayya, as well? Or?
Yeah, and I don't know. There's idea of a location, and I guess this people that are in the form realm, this kamaloka, this sensory realm, that we're bound to these physical forms and bound to these physical locations and things like that. But I don't know that it's that discrete, and that like there's an actual location, as we think of it. It may be a little bit different than that. But the fact that there was an appearance of an individual existence flying through the space kind of indicates a little bit more that they were somehow in touch with the physical realm. It was kind of more like the Tridevas maybe, or the Yakas or something like that. But they weren't in the one of the hells per se. Yeah,
it's our guess, right?
It's just a guess on my point. So
okay. So Sud says, how is the Yaka's wisdom ripe to break through to stream entry when he has been living by harming living beings prior to meeting the Buddha? And then someone else also had the same question, Dial. Is it possible that Yaka Alavaka had the potential for stream entry after killing all these human beings? I had the same thought actually when I was first thinking about this, when I was learning the story or hearing the story. And I do think it's important, like Ayya had said earlier, that this is from the commentary, not from the sutta itself. So
the whole story with the king, although there is something about his son actually being a stream enterer in the suttas. But,
yeah, so it's possible that the probably what's happened is that the commentary is kind of picking up some of the details here, right? Like there's this scene between the Buddha and this Yaka, and it's kind of expanding it and giving it this vast story behind it. And it's possible that this was kind of, sometimes the commentaries, they're not, it's, when you tell like these stories, we weren't actually telling the exact story. We were embellishing it a little bit, or maybe changing it, or some parts we didn't tell exactly the same, because we're telling a story and it's kind of more for entertainment and to kind of serve as present the Dhamma in a educational way that has a little bit of kind of more spice to it. So
Get your attention.
yeah. So I think it's possible also that, the commentary isn't necessarily expecting us to read it with fundamentally, like, with a fundamentalist attitude, like, oh, every word here is true, right? It's not, I don't get that impression from how the commentary is presenting itself. It's more saying, this is just kind of the folklore that we have surrounding the material, and it's a useful kind of story, an instructional, sort of entertaining thing. So, but it also is possible, if you think about the story of, say, Angulimala, if someone has been breaking the precepts, and then they hear the Dhamma and they repent, and they realize that was a mistake, and they sincerely, deeply they let go of that intention, and they let go and they resolve to do better, and they're inspired in the Dhamma, it actually is possible to have insights or gain faith in the Dhamma or attain even stream entry. There are cases of that happening also on people's deathbed, for instance. They live unethical lives, and then on their deathbed, they have contact with the Dhamma, and they have a good rebirth because they've sincerely repent. So it's possible also that, even if you're killing, as long as you don't do something too heavy, very what we call heavy karma, where it's kind of like if you kill your mother or your father, there are some suttas that indicate that if you do that, you wouldn't really be able to enter the stream. But if it's something like killing beings, even though that's very bad, it's something that can be let go of in this life, it seems to be. Anything on that, Ayya, or did you?
Yeah, that sounds really good. Yeah, I don't really have too much to add to that because this is part of it is speculation, I think, on our part. But educated guess, you might call it. But yeah, I've heard that too. Like the Angulimala is a good example because he was a mass murderer, and then he converted and he gave up. And it doesn't say in the sutta itself, actually, that Alawaka or Allah had become a stream enterer, but he did have great faith, enough faith in the Buddha that he was proclaiming the Buddha's, worthiness, and he was, wandering the streets proclaiming the greatness of the Buddha.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's another. Yeah, a lot of these questions are really difficult or impossible for us to answer because we don't have the kind of psychic powers.
This might be an easier one here.
Yes.
Looks like Joe says, Venerables, can we discuss the difference between metta and merit? Is there a merit bhavana? Do we radiate merit like metta? How does one practice sharing merit?
Well, first you have to do meritorious deeds, actually, with merit. So if you're keeping your sila, that's a meritorious deed. If you're acting out of generosity, doing things for other people, helping other people, that's a meritorious deed. If you're purifying your mind, doing a metta bhavana, that's a merit. So that's a double. That's a double. You're abandoning unwholesome mental states, purifying your mind, and bringing up thoughts of loving kindness. That's meritorious. So you can dedicate your metta bhavana towards other beings. But yeah, so metta bhavana, you wouldn't necessarily be there's thoughts and the wish for the well-being of other beings, and it's a subtle difference. I can see where you're. So for it to be effective, you really have to be purifying your heart of unwholesome states, your heart or mind of unwholesome states, and really bringing up a purity of a wish for the well-being of others. And it's transformative to oneself as well as others, like we were saying, and other people may sense it. But the act of the sharing merit is based on some wholesome deed, and it may be really you may be broadcasting metta to all beings, like that's one way of doing it. And so you're not specifically choosing a particular being, and then the impact might not be as strong as if you were really strongly dedicating merit from some action that you're doing really specifically for that person or being. So, but there is a lot of similarities.
Do we radiate merit like metta?
No, it's not. It's more if let's say there's a deities or devas in heaven, and let's say your grandmother had passed away, and she's a deva in a realm close enough to see what you're doing, and she's seeing that you're dedicating your sila. You dedicated to keeping your sila pure for the sake of your grandmother's happiness, for her to dedicate merit to her, and then she rejoices in her heavenly realm, seeing what you're doing, or you're dedicating, giving offerings, or going to the soup kitchen and helping hundreds of hungry people, ladling soup out, or making bread, or doing something in the soup kitchen. And so you dedicate that to your deceased ancestors, and some of them are in a Peta realm. So you're dedicating the merit to your deceased ancestors, and some of them are from the Peta realm, or gaining some amount of happiness and joy, and seeing you as an example, doing something good for other beings. Then there are other relatives that you dedicated it to, all your deceased relatives. Some of them are in Deva realms, and they're rejoicing in the Deva realm. So this helps them, because they're just maybe indulging in sense pleasures, but then they see this joy that can come from generosity, from kindness, from keeping the sila pure. And so maybe that helps them with a human rebirth, and then they're inclined to do this, likewise do generous acts. And this is all, I'm speaking like this not because I've seen this or know this, for my psychic powers, not like that, but just from my understanding from how I've heard venerables speak, the other monastics speak about this, and also from the suttas, what I've gathered. So,
and the scent of the virtue comes to mind with the radiating merit to me. But the Buddha does say that it's not really radiating merit, like Ayya was saying, there's sharing, but the suttas do talk about if you cultivate your mind, body, and your speech, that there's kind of a scent. And that also the devas, we smell differently to the devas. It actually says this in the suttas. If you're very virtuous, you smell better to the devas. So there is that kind of radiating virtue, or like if you're a very good person, people tend to naturally, they might not even know you, but often they'll feel more comfortable around you. Or sometimes animals, like if a hunter walks in, the animals will know. Or if someone is a kind of a unethical person, we might have a shady feeling about them, even if they haven't even spoken. So I think there is that sense of not radiating merit, but our virtue having an effect on others.
Thank you for that question. That's a good question.
I have a couple other questions lined up here.
Let's see.
Hasanta just says it's interesting that Buddhism discusses initial being, thinking about a universe, physical God, etc. not really a question, but a lot of the terms for different beings comes from Indian terminology at the time. Sud says, are Mara and Alvaka now disciples of the Buddha? Like in the Jaya Mangala Gatha, it says Buddha defeated Mara with things like generosity and defeated Alvaka with power of patience. Is there any story like this which says all these beings ended up just surrendering to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha?
Well, I don't think we have hope with Mara. He defeated Mara, and that Mara didn't, take control of the Buddha. That he was able to escape samsara, to attain full awakening. So it's a different kind of defeat than converting an ogre. Well, yeah. So so there's a difference. So I think a lot of the adversaries were defeated and they converted, but Mara, no, I don't think so.
And with that, we're out of time, everybody. So we'll be closing out for the night. So I hope that some of these spooky scaries weren't too spooky, and that the discussions on metta and merit were helpful and beneficial. So if you're feeling any kind of fear or dealing with any kind of other sentient beings that you feel could use some help or could be uplifted, you can always send metta and share our merit with them. So
should we end with the Karaniya Metta Sutta? I think this.
We're a little bit over, but we could do it.
It won't take too long.
We'll chant the Metta Sutta.
Is
here.
It
right here we have the
Pali's next to it.
Yeah. So this is the Metta Sutta actually in Pali. That is a common chant.
And we're dedicating this to all beings in all realms and wishing a good night's sleep.
Yes. Sadhu.
Karaniya Matta Kusalena Yantang Santang Padang Abhisamecha Sako Ujucha Sujucha Suvachocha Samudu Anatimani Santu Sakocha Subarocha Apakichocha Salahukawuti Santindriyocha Nipakocha Apagabho Kulesu Anugito Nachakudama Chare Kinchi Yena Vinyu Pare Upavadeyum Sukino wa Kemino Hontu Sabe Satta Bhavantu Sukitata Ye Kechipana Bhutati Tasawa Thavarawa Hanavasesa Digawa Yeva Mahantawa Majimara Saka Hanukatula Ditawa Yeva Adita Yecha Dure Vasanti Avidure Bhutawa Sambhave Siva Sabe Satta Bhavantu Sukhitata Naparo Param Nikubeta Nati Manyeta Katachina Kinchi Vairosana Patiga Sanya Nanya Manya Sadukha Micheya Mataya Taniyam Putang Ayusa Eka Putamanurake Evam Pisaba Bhutesu Manasang Bhavaye Aparimanam Metancha Sabalokasmin Manasang Bhavaye Aparimanam Udam Adocha Tiriyancha Asambadang Avera Masapatang Titang charang nisinno wa sayano yavata savitatmito. Etang satin aditteya brahmamedam viharamidhamahu. Ditincha anupagama silava dasanena sampanno. Kamesu vineya gedhang nahi jatu gabhaseya punareti. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.
Okay. May you all be happy, well, and sleep at ease.
Yes.